Welcome to the Franklin County NC Podcast. I'm James Hicks, and this is a podcast about Franklin County, North Carolina. On our broadcast, we hope you will learn a few things that you didn't know about Franklin County, North Carolina, plus some helpful tips for you in your daily lives. Today, I'm again joined by Katie Taggett, who is an emergency management planner in the Emergency Management Department. We're going to learn a little bit more about winter weather, something that we are dealing with. So welcome back to the podcast, Katie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, James. How are you?
I am good. We talked last time about your meteorology background, and we're back again today to talk about something that kind of segues into that with emergency management, but you could probably get a little bit more into the details of this. We're talking about winter weather, and when do we start generally on a year-to-year basis, when do we start seeing winter weather really start rolling in?
So obviously every year it's going to vary a little bit. I know last year we started really seeing winter weather effects here in North Carolina in January, but we have seen them as early as December, and we've seen them as late as in February. So just anywhere between December and January.
So we may be getting into some of it right now when this comes out. So how do these things begin? I mean, how does your winter storms begin?
So there's three main things in a nutshell that's needed for a winter storm. The jet stream kind of dips it into the south and brings really cold air from the Arctic down to the south, and it's really cold and dry air. Then you have the warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, and it kind of gets moved up north. And then you have the Gulf Stream that kind of adds fuel to a winter storm. Now, winter storms can form from a variety of weather patterns, but generally it's cold, dry air from the north, and it's warm, moist air from the south.
Okay. And does that, I'm going to ask it. I know we talked a little bit about this before, but you hear a lot about the nor'easters. Does that play into that somehow?
So it does, because it's still the general concept, cold air from the north, warm air from the south. But what's unique about nor'easters is that they're on the eastern coast, and generally the strongest winds from a nor'easter come from the northeast part of the storm. And that kind of just adds to the fuel to that, and it brings a variety of type of winter precipitation to the area, and it kind of just hits the East Coast all the way up into the New England states.
Okay, is it something that is pretty easy to distinguish? Oh, that's a nor'easter versus anything else? I mean, is there like markers or something that...
Generally, you can kind of tell when you're dealing with a nor'easter. It's normally off the coast. At least the ones that I've seen, they generally kind of form off the coast and bring things inland. Obviously, with any kind of meteorological system, there's variations with formation, but generally you see them kind of form off the coast and they just bring things inland.
So when we have this winter weather in Franklin County, we're just talking about winter weather, but what does that mean for Franklin County? I know it's so if you're from other parts of the country, but if you're from maybe Maine, Michigan, Upper Michigan, Minnesota, winter weather to them may mean a little something different than it does for us more in the South. So what does Franklin County expect to see typically in a winter weather storm?
That can truly vary per system because our location within the state is centralized. One winter storm, you could have a little bit of freezing rain, maybe some sleet, some slick roads, and you can call it a day. Another system can come in and bring 5 to 7 inches of snow. I know last winter we had some systems that would bring, just a couple of inches of snow, but it would primarily bring sleet, freezing rain, and ice. So we could have anything from fluffy white snow to ice forming on the ground and making everything slick as it can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that some of that is not as pleasant, but at least for those who look for, snowy, the nice, wonderful snow, what are the conditions that, have to, and I will say even too, when we have the snow the more snowy type stuff is not necessarily as bad as when we're dealing with that just straight up black ice kind of situation that we get into a lot. But the actual kind of the perfect snow, what is kind of the situation that happens that creates that when we get that every now and then? I mean, what are the conditions kind of have to be to get a nice, good snow versus just a wet, frozen road?
So the real big thing that and this kind of leads into like the different precipitation types, is obviously for water to freeze, it has to be below freezing. When you have a large column of air, if it's below freezing from the time that the moisture kind of precipitates down from the cloud and it stays cold, it will fall as snow. But if it were to start falling as snow and then warm up and melt and then refreeze, that's when you start getting the different types, the sleet, the freezing rain, the slushy stuff. But if it were to just be the whole column of air in the cloud was to be below freezing, and even down to the surface, if it stays below freezing, that's when you can start getting the snow and the really fluffy stuff.
Okay. So, but I feel like sometimes the conditions aren't always right for that. It's usually we're just going to be dealing with ice and some things like that.
But you also got to think, where North Carolina is located in general, we're not super far up north. We're also not super far south. So that's why I always say, and I know a lot of meteorologists agree, when it comes to just winter weather in general, you truly won't know what you're going to get until the event is already occurring. That's even more so, I feel, in the southern states, because we just have so many different variables in terms of weather patterns.
I've seen that happen a lot, where school districts, they got the best information they had on what was going to happen. Cancel school for a week, and it turns out to be nothing, because it's just ever changing in the moment, and things can really change there. And I guess too, I know with me growing up in South Carolina in the upstate, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about Western North Carolina. Of course, they have a lot of winter weather happen over there, but more on the eastern side, it's a little bit different over here, isn't it?
It's very much different, because I can attest, growing up on the coast, there was very, very few times we got any kind of measurable amount of snow, but we got ice. But I've had friends go to the mountains and say, hey, we got a foot of snow. Western part of North Carolina, they're more prepared for it compared to even central and eastern North Carolina. We tend to shut down at the word snow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because I'm very familiar with that. So when we have these type of weather things, not just with winter weather, but also with any weather, summer weather that we could have, there's a lot of terminology that's put out there about warnings, advisories. There's so many different, when hurricanes come around, there's numbering system for hurricanes, tropical depressions, storms. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about kind of the warnings and advisory situation.
Sure. And since our topic today is winter weather, I'll use those specific terminologies to better explain warnings. We'll start from advisory. Winter weather advisory, that normally means, hey, you're going to get some kind of wintry precipitation. It's probably not going to be super significant, but you're going to get something. We call advisories, or the best way to explain advisory is be aware. That's when you kind of need to start paying attention a little bit more. Winter storm watch is the next level up. That means conditions are favorable for winter storm conditions. With watches and warnings, it can vary on the time frame. I want to say, within the next 24 to 36 hours or something, within the shorter period of time. Condition, we're confident it's going to be medium chance for something's going to come. It might be a few inches of snow or, a little bit of ice and freezing rain. That's okay, it's time to be alert. That something's coming. And going back to winter storm warning, winter storm conditions are going to be expected in the area. Confidence is high. We're going to receive something. I know Raleigh's conditions for winter storm warnings is going to differ from NWS Wilmington, their conditions are going to be different for issuing these types of warnings. And warnings, just like anything, that means it's time to take action. It means this is imminent, or it's already occurring. It's time to do something.
Okay. And probably when you get into the warnings, it's going to be something significant is going to be happening. That snowstorm, that everybody wants for, especially, I don't know how many white Christmases there have been. I was actually just talking about this the other day, that growing up, you have like all these like Christmas movies, like Frosty the Snowman, and it, as a kid growing up in the South, what makes that a Christmas movie when you have all this snow and a snowman? Because that's not what I'm used to. I don't, if we get snow in the early part of the next year. So that's sort of one of those things that makes it different about the areas that we are in. And so we got you said advisory, watch, and warning? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah,
advisory is time to be aware. Watch is time to, be really alert. Warning, it's time to take action.
Okay. And that's even outside of winter weather, that's sort of the model for the other storms too.
Mm-hmm. Like, I remember on our previous episode, we were talking about tornadoes briefly. Even though there's no tornado advisory, that's not a thing. It's just tornado watch and warning. Tornado watch, conditions are favorable. You need to be alert. You need to be paying attention. Tornado warning, it's time to take action. Same principle.
Do we get tornado warnings during winter storms? And if so, do we get snow tornadoes?
I haven't seen it.
Okay. that just popped in my head.
No, I'm not saying tornado warnings haven't been issued during like winter times, but
yeah. Well, you watch those kind of the end of the world winter storm kind of movies, and there's all this stuff. Yeah. Probably not what we're going to be seeing here. So when we're looking at winter weather, I mean, of course we know kind of what's happening. We know what's going on, how it's happening, what to look for in our advisories, watches, and warnings. But what are some things that we can do to stay safe during a winter storm?
Well, if you know winter weather is coming, obviously I always say it's best to be prepared before the season even starts. Go ahead and have everything for your family, the basic necessities for a kit. I would also even recommend putting one in your car. Have the food, water, clothing, all the necessities, and even the things that are specific to your family that you need. Go ahead and make sure you have ways to stay warm, extra, blankets, stuff like that, because normally with winter storms, the power is going to come out, going to go out. Ways to keep warm safely. If you're going to use a generator, obviously, use a generator outside. Don't bring it inside. If you're going to burn things, make sure it's supervised, like in a fireplace. Stay home. When winter conditions are coming in and the roads start turning really slick, stay home as much as possible, unless it's a life-threatening emergency. But obviously, if there are times where people must travel during winter storms, so that's why I emphasized earlier, have a kit in your car, because if you become stranded on the side, you have some supplies with you until emergency services can get to you in a safe manner. But also, if you're going to drive in winter weather and it's going to be slick and icy, I know down here in the South, I've heard numerous times drive as if you were taking grandma to church and she has, the biscuits in the back seat or something like that, or in the floorboard, and she has a crock pot full of gravy and you don't want it to spill on her Sunday best. Mm-hmm. Take it easy and then get there safely. And then obviously after the winter storm comes through, try not to be too eager to go out and, I understand everybody gets cabin fever from being locked up, but be cautious if you're going to venture out. Winter weather can bring down power lines and poles and trees and all that, and you just never know what kind of debris you may come across. So just exercise caution when you're, vacating the property to survey damage after a winter storm.
And I mean, if it's a long winter storm and you have to be cooped up in the house, just remember in 2020, spring of 2020 when COVID was happening and you were stuck for a while and couldn't go anywhere. This is not that bad, just a couple of days, because it will melt here. So just remember you got through COVID with the cabin fever. You'll be just fine in a winter storm. So we also have, and this got brought up as well, I don't know, emergency management or somewhere with emergency services. There is I don't want to call it, I guess, a registry or something for critical support. I don't know. I'm searching for the words, but for people who have maybe critical medical equipment when powers go out, that people can register with, so that if the power does go out, then emergency management and others can know, well, we need to get resources to that person because there's some critical medical technology that needs to be powered. And that's something that you guys over there work with, right?
Mm-hmm. So for the longest of times, it was always referred to as the Special Needs Registry. Most people nowadays are trying to refer to it as Access and Functional Needs Registry. And it basically, what that tells us is, obviously it's a self-voluntary thing, although we highly recommend it for those individuals. That helps us identify, who's on critical life-saving equipment. So if the power goes out, we need to find a way to supply them a generator, for example, or who's, who may be having ambulatory issues and trying to seek shelter somewhere else. It gives us an idea of, okay, this is the area that has the most critical individuals that we need to look out for, make sure that they're okay, whether it be, just making sure that they're taken care of prior to the storm and all that. But we do have a registry on file with emergency services. I know the community paramedics have been working with me on that, and I think that's primarily their thing now. But we do have a registry of people that will call and make sure that they have everything they need and to check on before, throughout, and after.
Yeah, and that's something, if you're in that situation or know someone who might need to be on that registry, you can call the main number and ask for someone there, and that's 919-496-5005. And that's that number. You can mention the Special Needs Registry or something to that matter. They'll know what you're talking about if you need to get someone put on that, just in case. You never know what's going to happen with that. But also, when we get to winter storms and power outages and things like that, and now with technology and in the modern times here, it's a lot easier to get information about power outages. And I know some providers, I know Duke will sometimes text you before you thought power was out and say, we think the power may be out in your area. And you're like, well, it's still working. Up there it went. Yep. So, and of course, between Duke Energy and Wake Electric, that's our main people here. Mm-hmm. But even going out and above that to figure out what's going on, you can always follow the Franklin County Emergency Services Facebook page or the Twitter page for emergency management, which is at Franklin, CONCEM. And they keep up with that stuff, and we'll put it out about how many power outages are out there or any information that comes through that they're aware of. They're really good about pushing that out there. Do you have any, have any tips for when the power goes out? Any generic tips of whatever, of what people should do?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, if you have a generator and you plan to use it, make sure it's ventilated properly so you don't run the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. If you have food in the refrigerator and the freezer, keep it closed, obviously, so you don't run the risk as much of food spoilage. If the power goes out, try not to. In fact, don't use candles as a source of light. Obviously, that's a fire hazard. We don't want to have the house burn down. Lamps, like the little portable lamps and all that, are the best things really to have for light sources. You've got to cook food, have a little propane thing, or again, just make sure you're ventilating things properly. But also, if you're in an area that's prone to power outages, make sure you have a backup way to, especially if you have a family member who, like as we were mentioning earlier, that relies on medical equipment or something. Make sure you have a backup plan of, okay, if this machine goes down, how am I still going to get the primary things that I need for my family? Those are the really big things that I can think of.
Yeah, some of that does go into our fire marshal's range. I mean, obviously, don't build a fire in the middle of your house or do things like that. Exercise common sense, which most people do. But fires tend to be a little bit more prevalent sometimes when we have this type of thing, because there's a lot of different things going on there, especially with the heating and depending on the heating sources and stuff like that. So with winter weather, we're looking at how we talked about, it's starting in maybe December, January into February or whatever. We know how we have an end date or kind of a approximate day where we're kind of out of the woods. Is that in late March or?
Oh, it's way before March. I mean, obviously there's outlier storms. We see that all the time. I mean, I've even seen times where we've had no more snow as February into March. Like I say, it really depends. Normally I've seen winter weather patterns, like I say, late December through early February. That's normally when I see it, when I do my forecasting. But those are the general time frames.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you'll have some random April snow blizzard or whatever one year, and that's just a weird year. But generally speaking, those are the time frames. And so that's a lot of information about winter storms and how to be prepared for them, and some good safety tips and some good knowledge overall about weather, and remembering the advisory watch warnings, and that's applicable throughout the year. Well, that's about all the time we have left for today. Tune in for more informative programming about what is happening in Franklin County, NC. Like or subscribe to the Franklin County, NC podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and share a comment or review. To find out more information about Franklin County, go to our website at franklincountync.gov and sign up for a email newsletter while you are there. For all of us here at Franklin County, I'm James Hicks, and we'll talk to you soon.